How did Hollywood convince us that only a few famous movies mattered in the 1950s? Some were ignored because they were too dark. Others simply disappeared. But these 35 forgotten films may be more daring than many classics everyone keeps praising. Before we uncover these forgotten treasures, press the like button and subscribe to our channel, because the greatest films are not always the ones Hollywood remembers. Number 35. The Tall Target, 1951. The Tall Target creates suspense from an event the audience already understands. Abraham Lincoln must reach Washington, yet someone may be planning to stop him before his presidency begins. Dick Powell plays New York Police Sergeant John Kennedy, a detective who hears about a conspiracy to attack the president-elect during his train journey through Baltimore. His superiors dismiss the warning. Kennedy resigns from the police, boards the train alone, and attempts to discover which passenger is part of the plot. Almost the entire movie unfolds inside railway cars. Kennedy expects to meet a fellow officer, but the man disappears. His ticket is taken, his identity is questioned, and every attempt to send a message seems to fail. A military colonel appears helpful but may be hiding something. A Southern woman travels with an enslaved servant played by Ruby Dee, while other passengers openly argue about Lincoln and the country's approaching crisis. One of the film's strongest scenes occurs when Kennedy finds a body hidden on the train and realizes the conspirators are already ahead of him. The narrow corridors make movement difficult. Doors lock, lamps swing, and the noise of the wheels prevents passengers from hearing danger only a few feet away. Director Anthony Mann does not rely on a large musical score. The train itself provides the rhythm. Whistles, brakes, footsteps, and metal striking the tracks make every conversation feel urgent. The clever part is that Kennedy cannot simply announce the conspiracy. He has lost his badge, lacks proof, and is surrounded by people with strong political loyalties. Even honest passengers may refuse to believe him. The Tall Target turns a historical rumor into a compact film noir. It shows a divided nation through one crowded train, where nobody knows who can be trusted, and the future of the country appears to depend on a detective almost everyone considers a nuisance. Number 34. The Holly and the Ivy, 1952. The Holly and the Ivy appears to promise a warm family Christmas. Instead, it asks what happens when relatives gather after spending years hiding the truth from one another. Ralph Richardson plays Reverend Martin Gregory, a widowed country clergyman who hopes his grown children will return home for the holiday. His dependable daughter Jenny lives with him and quietly plans to sacrifice her future because she believes her father cannot manage alone. The family arrives carrying problems Martin has never noticed. Jenny wants to marry but feels trapped by duty. His son Michael has become bitter about religion after his wartime experiences. His other daughter Margaret appears glamorous and cheerful, yet she uses drink and jokes to hide a devastating personal loss. The film's strongest sequence belongs to Margaret, played by Margaret Leighton. Late at night, the family celebration has collapsed into arguments. She finally tells Jenny what happened during the war and why she has been unable to build a normal life afterward. The scene is painful because she does not suddenly become calm or noble. She speaks like someone who has held the story inside until it became impossible to carry. Martin believes his position as a clergyman should make his children comfortable speaking to him. They explain that his goodness made him seem unreachable. He spent years helping parishioners while failing to see the people inside his own house. The Christmas setting makes every confession sharper. Decorations, food, and church bells continue, while the family admits how distant they have become. Yet the movie does not end in hopelessness. Honest conversation creates the first chance for real closeness. Number 33. Track of the Cat, 1954. Track of the Cat is a Western filmed in color, yet most of its world appears black, white, gray, and frozen. The only bright object is the red coat worn by the man who believes he controls everyone. Robert Mitchum plays Kurt Bridges, the strongest and loudest son in a ranching family trapped by a heavy snowstorm. Cattle are being attacked by a mysterious Black Panther. Kurt and his quieter brother Arthur ride into the mountains to hunt it, leaving the rest of the family inside a house filled with old resentment. The animal is rarely shown. Instead, its tracks appear in the snow, horses react nervously, and distant sounds make the family imagine something larger than an ordinary predator. The unseen cat becomes connected to every fear inside the ranch. At home, the controlling mother uses religion to judge everyone. The father hides inside drink and humor. Daughter Grace feels her life has disappeared. Youngest son Harold wants to marry Gwen, but he is afraid to challenge Kurt's authority. One of the strongest sequences shows Kurt alone in the white wilderness after the hunt goes wrong. His red coat makes him look powerful from a distance, but the enormous landscape slowly reduces him to a small, frightened figure. He shouts at an enemy he cannot see while the wind seems to answer him. director William A. Wellman designed the movie almost like a black and white picture despite using color. The panther threatens the cattle, but the family is already destroying itself. Kurt's bullying, the mother's bitterness, and years of silence are more dangerous than any animal. Track of the Cat is a strange, psychological western in which the final battle is not about defeating nature. It is about whether the survivors can stop living under fear. Number 32, The Green Man, 1956. The Green Man turns a professional assassin, a vacuum cleaner salesman, a nervous hotel manager, and a secret romantic meeting into one of the decade's strangest comedy thrillers. Alastair Sim plays Hawkins, a polite watchmaker who secretly builds bombs for paid assignments. He speaks softly, plans carefully, and treats each attack like a technical problem. His newest target is Sir Gregory Upshot, a government figure planning to spend the evening at a seaside hotel called the Green Man. Hawkins hides an explosive device inside a radio and arranges for it to be placed near the target. The plan begins collapsing when a secretary discovers suspicious notes. Hawkins attempts to silence her, but her neighbor William Blake enters the situation. William is an ordinary salesman played by George Cole, and he has no idea how dangerous Hawkins really is. The funniest and most suspenseful sequence involves William trying to explain the planned attack to people who think he is confused, jealous, or selling something. Doors slam, couples hide, identities are mixed up, and the bomb continues moving from room to room while nobody agrees about where it has gone. Terry Thomas appears as Sir Gregory, whose secret meeting makes him determined to avoid attention. That means the intended victim repeatedly prevents the very people trying to save him from discovering where he is. The final rush to locate the radio combines farce with genuine danger. Every second matters, yet each character misunderstands the others. The Green Man works because it never chooses between comedy and suspense. It is a forgotten reminder that British comedies could be elegant, dark, and wonderfully cruel without losing their light touch. Number 31. The White Reindeer, 1952. The White Reindeer looks like an ancient legend discovered inside the snow rather than a horror movie created in the 1950s. Set in Finnish Lapland, the film follows Pirita, a lively young woman who marries a reindeer herder named Aslak. Their early days together are joyful, but Aslak must spend long periods away with the herds. Pirita becomes lonely and fears that her husband no longer desires her. She visits a shaman and asks for a charm that will make her irresistible. He prepares a ritual and tells her to sacrifice the first living creature she encounters. Pirita obeys, but the magic awakens something dangerous. Under the moon, she transforms into a white reindeer that attracts men into the frozen wilderness. The movie's most famous images show the white animal racing across enormous fields of snow, while hunters follow with skis and spears. The bright landscape, dark figures, and fast movement create a strange beauty. When the animal disappears and Pirita returns, the men cannot understand how desire and danger have become the same thing. As more herders vanish, fear spreads through the community. Pirita is both the threat and the person suffering most from it. She wants affection, but the spell turns every attempt at closeness into destruction. Her husband eventually joins the hunt without knowing that the creature he is tracking is his own wife. Directed and photographed by Eric Blomberg, the film uses Sami-inspired folklore, music, ritual, and landscape to create an atmosphere unlike normal studio horror. Mirjami Kuosmanen, who also helped write the movie, gives Pirita both wild energy and deep sadness. The White Reindeer is not simply about a monster. It is about loneliness becoming a curse and a woman discovering that the power to attract everyone may leave her completely alone. Number 30. The Narrow Margin, 1952. The Narrow Margin takes a simple train ride and turns every compartment, corridor, and reflection into a possible trap. Detective Walter Brown is ordered to escort Frankie Neal, the widow of a gangster, from Chicago to Los Angeles. She is expected to testify before a grand jury and carries information that could damage powerful criminals. Before the journey even begins, Brown's partner is attacked, proving that the killers already know their plan. Brown and the witness board the train while criminals search for the woman they must silence. Marie Windsor plays Frankie as rude, impatient, and completely unwilling to behave like a frightened victim. She insults Brown, complains about the small compartment, and makes protecting her almost impossible. One of the movie's finest scenes occurs when Brown sees a gangster's face reflected in the window of a closing train door. Nobody announces the danger. A brief reflection tells him that the enemy has entered the same moving space and that there is no easy escape until the next station. The train constantly works against him. Narrow passages force strangers to brush past one another. The dining car places everyone in full view. Loud wheels hide footsteps. At one point, Brown fights inside a tiny compartment where neither man has enough room to move normally. The The story becomes even more clever when Brown meets a friendly passenger named Anne Sinclair and her young son. He fears the criminals may mistake Anne for the witness, but explaining the truth could place her in even greater danger. Then, a late revelation changes what Brown and the audience believed about the entire journey. Director Richard Fleischer made the film quickly and cheaply, yet the limits became its greatest advantage. The narrow margin never gives its characters space to relax. It is a 70-minute lesson in how suspense can come from doors, luggage, strangers, and the terrible knowledge that a train cannot turn around. Number 29. Pool of London, 1951. Pool of London opens with merchant sailors arriving in the capital, but their short leave becomes connected to a robbery that reaches from crowded docks to empty nighttime streets. Dan MacDonald is a confident sailor who enjoys bending rules and making quick money. His friend Johnny Lambert, played by Earl Cameron, is a quiet Jamaican crewman who wants only a few peaceful days ashore. Dan agrees to carry a small package for criminals, believing it is ordinary smuggling. He soon learns that the package is connected to a diamond theft and that the people behind it will protect themselves at any cost. While Dan moves deeper into trouble, Johnny meets a young theater worker named Pat. Their gentle friendship becomes one of the film's most important parts. Johnny is careful because he knows strangers may judge them. Pat is less concerned with what other people think, but the city constantly reminds them that even an innocent relationship can attract attention. The famous robbery sequence takes place around a theater and nearby rooftops. The criminals use backstage passages, ladders, and the confusion of a performance to reach their target. When the plan begins falling apart, the movie spreads across real London locations. Police search streets, river officers watch the water, and the docks become a maze where every ship might offer escape. The strongest moment is not a large action scene. Johnny and Pat simply sit together, speaking honestly about whether their friendship could survive outside these few days. Their conversation gives the crime story an emotional weight that many thrillers of the period avoided. Directed by Basil Dearden, Pool of London captures a city still marked by war but changing quickly. It is a robbery film, a dockside drama, and an unusually thoughtful story about two people discovering that society may place limits on feelings they never considered wrong. Like this video, subscribe, and tell us in the comments how many titles you recognize before we reach number 1. Number 28. The Long Memory, 1953. The Long Memory follows a man who leaves prison after 12 years and discovers that revenge may keep him trapped more securely than any cell. John Mills plays Philip Davidson, who was convicted after witnesses lied about a death aboard a burning boat. When he is finally released, he returns to the bleak marshes beside the River Thames. He lives inside an abandoned barge and begins searching for the people whose false statements destroyed his life. Philip is watched by Superintendent Bob Lowther, a police officer with a personal connection to the case. Lowther expects violence and believes the former prisoner will eventually prove that the original judgment was correct. However, new details suggest the dead man may still be alive and that Philip's conviction was built on deliberate deception. One of the film's most memorable sequences takes place across the foggy marshland at night. Philip follows a frightened witness between ruined boats, muddy paths, and empty buildings. The landscape seems almost outside normal society. Police lights appear in the distance, but the people involved remain separated by darkness and water. Philip also meets Ilsa, a lonely refugee who understands what it means to live without a secure home. Her presence slowly changes him. For the first time since leaving prison, he must decide whether he wants a future or only wants the past to suffer. Director Robert Hamer gives the movie the mood of British film noir. Philip appears to be another abandoned object until someone treats him as a human being. The final pursuit forces the truth into the open, but legal innocence does not immediately erase 12 lost years. The Long Memory is about a wrongful conviction, yet its deeper question is whether a person can surrender hatred without surrendering justice. Number 27. The Good Die Young, 1954. The Good Die Young begins with 4 men inside a taxi after a robbery. Then it moves backward to show how 3 desperate people allowed a charming predator to control them. Lawrence Harvey plays Miles Ravencourt, known as Rave, a wealthy former officer who lives through gambling, lies, and his wife's money. He meets 3 men whose lives are collapsing. Mike is an injured boxer who has lost his savings. Joe is an American trying to rescue his pregnant wife from her controlling mother. Eddie is an airman desperate to win back an unfaithful wife. None of these men begins as a serious criminal. Rave studies their fears and offers a solution. He knows about a post office shipment and claims the robbery can be completed without anyone being hurt. The others agree because each believes money will repair his marriage or restore his dignity. The robbery sequence destroys that illusion. The men enter expecting a controlled operation, but Rave carries a real weapon and reacts with sudden violence when police appear. In seconds, the plan becomes something the others never agreed to do. The final chase is the movie's most memorable section. The survivors move through dark London streets, railway platforms, and underground tunnels while loyalties break apart. Rave continues speaking as though he is the cleverest person in the room, but the frightened men finally understand that he never saw them as partners. Director Lewis Gilbert spends time on each man's home life before bringing the stories together. That structure makes the crime feel less like adventure and more like a collection of bad decisions pushed toward disaster. The Good Die Young asks how much responsibility belongs to the tempter and how much belongs to those who decide to follow him. Number 26. The Clouded Yellow, 1950. The Clouded Yellow begins like a quiet country mystery, then suddenly turns into a fast-moving chase across post-war Britain. Trevor Howard plays David Summers, a British intelligence agent who is dismissed after a mission goes badly. Tired, embarrassed, and unsure what to do next, he accepts a peaceful job cataloging butterflies at a country estate. At the estate, David meets Sophie Malraux, played by Gene Simmons. Sophie is shy, emotionally fragile, and treated like a problem by the people around her. When a gamekeeper is found dead, the evidence appears to point directly toward her. David does not believe she is responsible. Instead of handing her to the police, he uses his old intelligence skills to help her escape. The movie's most memorable section follows David and Sophie through railway stations, industrial streets, Liverpool docks, and the open countryside. They change clothes, hide among strangers, and attempt to stay one step ahead of both the police and the real criminal. A chase across rooftops and warehouses turns the story into something much larger than the small murder mystery promised at the beginning. What makes the film work is David's growing concern for Sophie. At first, helping her gives the former agent another mission. Gradually, it becomes personal. He realizes that catching the criminal is not enough. He must also convince Sophie that she is not as helpless as her family made her believe. Director Ralph Thomas mixes romance, suspense, and location photography with surprising confidence. The Clouded Yellow feels like a missing bridge between Alfred Hitchcock's innocent person thrillers and the grittier British chase films that followed. Number 25. The Ship That Died of Shame, 1955. During the war, motor gunboat 1087 carried its crew through dangerous missions without failing them. After peace arrives, the same men buy the boat and slowly turn it into a tool for crime. Bill Randall, George Hoskins, and Birdie once trusted one another completely. Civilian life, however, feels disappointing. Jobs are limited, money is short, and their wartime importance has vanished. Hoskins suggests using their old vessel for small smuggling trips. At first, the cargo seems harmless, wine and other goods restricted by post-war rules. The jobs become darker. They transport counterfeit money, weapons, and people trying to escape the law. Randall grows uncomfortable, but Hoskins treats every moral objection as weakness. The boat that once responded perfectly begins suffering strange engine failures whenever the cargo becomes especially shameful. The movie's most memorable idea is that 1087 appears to possess a conscience. Gauges fail, machinery stops, and the vessel seems to resist the men using it. Nobody can prove anything supernatural is happening, yet the crew begins speaking about the boat as though it remembers what they once stood for. The turning point arrives when they learn that one passenger is connected to a terrible crime. Randall realizes they are no longer bending foolish regulations. They are protecting people they would once have risked their lives to stop. A stormy final journey forces the former friends into open conflict. The deck becomes a battlefield, but this time there is no honorable mission and no enemy flag. Directed by Basil Dearden and produced by Ealing Studios, The Ship That Died of Shame is a post-war crime drama disguised as a ghost story without a ghost. Number 24. The Browning Version, 1951. The Browning version proves that a small gift from one student can be more powerful than any large dramatic speech. Michael Redgrave plays Andrew Crocker Harris, an aging classics teacher at an English boys' school. He is strict, distant, and so disliked that students secretly call him the Croc. Poor health is forcing him to retire, but the school refuses to give him the pension and farewell position he expected after years of service. His private life is even more painful. His wife Millie openly humiliates him and has become involved with another teacher, Frank Hunter. Crocker Harris understands more than he admits, but he has spent so many years controlling his emotions that he no longer knows how to defend himself. The most famous scene begins when a student named Taplow visits him with a farewell gift. It is a second-hand copy of Robert Browning's translation of Agamemnon. Taplow has written a Greek message inside, describing a gentle teacher viewed kindly from afar. Crocker Harris realizes that at least one student saw something human beneath his cold behavior. Redgrave barely moves as he reads the message. Then the teacher's control breaks. He covers his face and quietly cries, not because the book is valuable, but because simple kindness has reached a man who believed he deserved none. Later, Crocker Harris faces the entire school. He abandons his prepared speech and admits that he failed to give his pupils the warmth and inspiration they deserved. For the first time, he speaks without hiding behind rules or ancient language. Director Anthony Asquith avoids easy comfort. One emotional moment cannot repair a damaged marriage or restore a lost career, yet it can force a person to see himself honestly. The Browning version is about regret, but it also suggests that dignity can begin when someone finally stops pretending he feels nothing. Number 23. Yield to the Night, 1956. Yield to the Night begins after the crime. Its real subject is not whether Mary Hilton is guilty, but what it means for a human being to spend each morning wondering whether it will be her last. Diana Dors plays Mary, a young woman convicted of killing Lucy Carpenter, the wealthy woman connected to the man Mary loved. She waits inside the condemned section of a women's prison while appeals and requests for mercy move through offices she cannot see. The story shifts between the prison and Mary's memories. She remembers meeting Jim, believing he loved her, and slowly realizing that she was only one part of his confused life. Her jealousy and despair led to the public attack that placed her in the cell. The most powerful scenes are built from routine. Guards remove objects that could be used dangerously. Shoes approach outside the door. A light remains on through the night. Mary eats, sleeps, speaks to the chaplain, and tries to understand the women assigned to watch her. Every ordinary action becomes unbearable because the final date may be announced at any moment. One famous sequence shows Mary waking suddenly as footsteps stop outside. She stares at the door, expecting the decision. The guards enter for an ordinary reason, but relief lasts only a few seconds. The waiting itself has become a punishment. Dors was often promoted mainly for glamour, yet this performance removes that image. Her Mary can be selfish, frightened, angry, and childlike. Director J. Lee Thompson keeps the prison plain and controlled. There is no heroic escape plan. The tension comes from time moving forward. Yield to the Night is difficult because it forces the audience to remain beside someone society has already decided to forget. Number 22. Time Without Pity, 1957. Time Without Pity gives a broken father only 24 hours to save the son he neglected for years. Michael Redgrave plays David Graham, a writer struggling with alcoholism who returns to England after treatment in Canada. His son Alec has been convicted of killing his girlfriend and is scheduled to be executed the following morning. David missed the trial, and Alec has almost no reason to trust him. David begins reopening the case. The last people to see the young woman belonged to the wealthy Stanford family. Robert Stanford, played by Leo McKern, is a loud industrialist who controls his household through anger. His nervous son Brian was Alec's friend, and the family's explanations contain small contradictions. The investigation is painful because David's greatest enemy is not only the hidden killer. Every restaurant, hotel, and private room contains a drink. One of the film's strongest scenes places David inside the Stanford home while a violent argument erupts. He watches Robert's temper change the behavior of everyone around him. Suddenly, the family's fear becomes more important than the official evidence used at Alec's trial. The final plan is desperate. David understands that discovering the truth may not be enough. He needs proof powerful enough to stop the execution before the clock runs out. His attempt to force the real criminal into the open turns the father's weakness into a final act of courage. Director Joseph Losey fills the movie with clocks, telephones, cars, and doors that never open quickly enough. Time itself feels like an official refusing to listen. Number 21. Woman in a Dressing Gown, 1957. Woman in a Dressing Gown finds heartbreak inside a cramped London flat filled with dirty dishes, unfinished chores, loud music, and a wife who still believes affection can solve everything. Yvonne Mitchell plays Amy Preston, a warm but disorganized middle-aged woman living with her husband Jim and their teenage son Brian. Amy spends much of the day in her dressing gown. She starts many household tasks, finishes few of them, and covers every mistake with jokes and nervous energy. Jim, played by Anthony Quayle, has begun an affair with his younger secretary Georgie. Georgie wants him to leave Amy and create a new life with her. When Jim finally announces that the marriage is over, Amy refuses to understand. She believes she can win him back by cleaning the flat, changing her appearance, and preparing a perfect meal. The effort becomes the movie's most painful sequence. Amy rushes through shops and beauty appointments while rain falls, packages tear, and every small mistake ruins the image she is trying to create. The confrontation between Amy and Georgie avoids making either woman a simple villain. Georgie sees Amy's disorder and believes Jim has been trapped. Amy sees Georgie's youth and realizes that love alone may not protect her marriage. Jim stands between them, expecting the women to solve the decision he created. Director J. Lee Thompson uses restless camera movement and close domestic detail to make ordinary life feel almost overwhelming. A boiling pan or ringing telephone becomes part of Amy's emotional panic. Woman in a dressing gown was an early step toward British kitchen sink realism, but its real power comes from refusing to laugh at Amy. Her mess is visible. Her loneliness had remained hidden. Number 20. The Man from Planet X, 1951. Before science fiction became filled with giant spaceships and expensive effects, the Man from Planet X created an alien encounter using fog, shadows, strange noises, and a tiny budget. Directed by Edgar G. Ulmer, the movie takes place on a remote Scottish island where a mysterious planet is moving dangerously close to Earth. Reporter John Lawrence arrives at the isolated home of Professor Elliot, who has been studying the approaching planet. Soon, they discover a strange spacecraft hidden across the foggy moor. Beside it stands a small humanoid visitor wearing a glass helmet and breathing through a mechanical device. At first, the creature appears frightened rather than dangerous. Professor Elliot wants peaceful communication, but his dishonest colleague, Dr. Mears, sees something far more valuable. He believes the visitor's advanced metal could make him wealthy and powerful. Mears damages the alien's breathing equipment and tries forcing information from him, turning a peaceful meeting into a frightening confrontation. The movie's most memorable sequence happens when the visitor begins controlling people with a strange beam. Villagers silently walk through the fog like sleepwalkers while the alien prepares his ship. The limited sets should make the scene look cheap, yet the darkness and heavy mist create a dreamlike atmosphere. Number 19. The Sound Barrier, 1952. David Lean is remembered for giant productions such as Lawrence of Arabia, but one of his most overlooked films is a tense British drama about pilots risking everything to fly faster than sound. The Sound Barrier follows wealthy aircraft manufacturer Sir John Ridgefield, a brilliant but emotionally distant man determined to build a jet capable of crossing the sound barrier. His daughter Susan is married to Tony Garthwaite, a former wartime pilot who now tests Ridgefield's experimental aircraft. Tony understands that every flight could be his last. Susan watches her husband climb into machines that shake, stall, and become nearly impossible to control at extreme speed. Ridgefield, however, treats each failure as another technical problem that must be solved. One of the strongest sequences shows Tony pushing the experimental aircraft toward the barrier. The controls become heavy, the plane shakes, and the normal rules of flight appear to stop working. There is no loud heroic speech. Lean builds the tension through instruments, engine noise, nervous faces, and the terrifying emptiness surrounding the aircraft. After tragedy strikes, Susan blames her father for valuing progress more than human life. Yet Ridgefield continues the project with another pilot, Philip Peel. During the final test, Peel remembers an unusual lesson introduced earlier in the film. Instead of reacting naturally, he moves the controls in the opposite direction and regains control. Number 18. The Sniper, 1952. The Sniper is not a comfortable crime film. Instead of creating a charming villain or a clever mystery, it follows a disturbed delivery worker who knows he is losing control and repeatedly tries to warn society before more lives are destroyed. Arthur Franz plays Eddie Miller, a quiet man living alone in an unnamed city filmed around San Francisco. Eddie feels angry and rejected, especially around women. However, the movie does not treat him as a criminal mastermind. He appears frightened by his own thoughts. Early in the story, Eddie deliberately injures his hand and visits a hospital, hoping someone will recognize that he needs help. The exhausted medical staff treats the wound but misses the warning. Eddie later sends an anonymous letter asking the police to stop him, yet the message fails to produce an immediate response. The film's most famous scene takes place near a nightclub. A singer played by Marie Windsor finishes her performance and walks into her dressing room. Across the street, Eddie waits on a rooftop. Director Edward Dmytryk shows the distance between them, creating tension without using excessive detail. A single action suddenly changes the entire investigation. Detectives search the city while a police psychologist argues that punishment alone cannot explain or prevent such crimes. That idea was unusually direct for an early 1950s thriller. The final moments are surprisingly quiet. There is no grand confrontation or heroic celebration. When Eddie is finally surrounded, his face shows relief rather than defiance. The movie leaves viewers with an uncomfortable question: how many warning signs were ignored before the police began searching for him? Number 17. The Bigamist, 1953. The title makes The Bigamist sound like a sensational scandal picture. Ida Lupino's film is actually a sad and complicated drama in which nearly every character is wounded by loneliness. Edmund O'Brien plays Harry Graham, a traveling businessman living in San Francisco with his wife Eve, played by Joan Fontaine. The couple wants to adopt a child, so adoption investigator Mr. Jordan begins examining their background. Harry becomes nervous when Jordan asks about his frequent business trips to Los Angeles. Jordan follows the trail and discovers something shocking. Harry has another home, another wife named Phyllis, played by Lupino herself, and a baby. Instead of running, Harry explains how his double life began. Eve had become deeply involved in their business while struggling with the pain of not having children. During lonely trips to Los Angeles, Harry met Phyllis on a sightseeing tour of Hollywood stars' homes. Their friendship slowly became a relationship. When Phyllis became pregnant, Harry married her rather than abandon her and the child. The movie's most memorable sequence arrives in the courtroom. Harry stands before the judge while both wives sit inside the same room. They look at him, then at each other, realizing that no legal decision can repair what has happened. Lupino avoids turning either woman into a villain. The film does not excuse Harry's dishonesty, but it refuses to make him a simple monster. That emotional uncertainty gives the story its power. The Bigamist is about betrayal, but it is also about people making terrible decisions while desperately trying to avoid hurting those they love. Number 16, The Hitch-Hiker, 1953. Two ordinary friends make one careless decision in The Hitch-Hiker, and their peaceful fishing trip becomes a nightmare across the empty roads of Mexico. Roy Collins and Gilbert Bowen pick up a stranger named Emmett Myers. They do not know that Myers is a wanted criminal who has already attacked other motorists. Once inside their car, he pulls a weapon and orders them to continue driving south. William Tallman makes Myers frightening without loud behavior. One of his eyes cannot fully close, meaning Roy and Gilbert never know whether he is sleeping. Even at night, the open eye appears to watch them. This detail becomes one of the film's most memorable visual ideas. Director Ida Lupino traps the three men inside cars, desert camps, and narrow rocky paths. The wide landscape should suggest freedom, yet it makes the hostages appear more isolated. Myers humiliates them, forces them to complete exhausting tasks, and repeatedly suggests that only one may survive. A famous scene involves an empty can placed on the ground. Myers orders one man to hold it while the other fires at it. The scene is not frightening because of graphic detail. It is frightening because Myers treats human fear like casual entertainment. The two friends secretly communicate in English, hoping Myers cannot understand them. Radio reports gradually reveal that the authorities are closing in, but Myers becomes more unpredictable as his escape route disappears. Number 15, The Naked Dawn, 1955. The Naked Dawn looks like a simple western about a charming bandit, but underneath its colorful Mexican landscape is a dark story about money poisoning three people. Arthur Kennedy plays Santiago, a cheerful outlaw who steals goods from railway freight cars. After his partner is lost during a robbery, Santiago needs help moving the stolen property. He approaches Manuel, a poor farmer living with his young wife Maria. Manuel initially refuses. He wants to remain honest, even though his land produces almost nothing. Santiago tempts him with promises of easy money, exciting travel, and a life beyond poverty. Eventually, Manuel agrees to help him. The three characters soon become trapped in a dangerous triangle. Maria is attracted to Santiago's confidence and freedom. Santiago begins caring for her, while Manuel grows suspicious and greedy. The money that was supposed to save the couple slowly destroys their trust. One of the movie's strongest scenes occurs after Santiago and Manuel sell the stolen goods. The dishonest buyer attempts to cheat them, but Santiago turns the negotiation into a tense game. His smile never disappears, yet every person in the room understands that the situation could change instantly. Later, Manuel considers betraying Santiago and taking all the money. Maria considers leaving her husband. Santiago, who introduced temptation into their home, finally realizes that his presence may ruin everyone. Director Edgar G. Ulmer reportedly filmed the picture very quickly, yet it has rich colors, expressive landscapes, and unusually complicated characters. François Truffaut later connected it to the emotional triangle in Jules and Jim. This is not a Western about heroes and villains. It is about ordinary people discovering what they might become when money offers an escape. Number 14, The Phoenix City Story, 1955. Some crime films create fictional cities. The Phoenix City Story was inspired by corruption that had become painfully real. The movie is set in Phoenix City, Alabama, where gambling rooms, dishonest clubs, and criminal businesses operate openly. Local police officers either feel powerless or have been bought. Soldiers from nearby Fort Benning enter the city looking for entertainment, providing money that keeps the criminal system alive. John McIntyre plays Albert Patterson, a respected lawyer who has avoided politics. His son John returns from military service and becomes involved with citizens trying to clean up the town. At first, Albert believes legal reform is almost impossible. He eventually agrees to run for state attorney general on an anti-corruption campaign. Director Phil Carlson films many scenes with documentary-style roughness. The picture even begins with interviews involving actual residents, making the line between drama and reality feel uncertain. One of the most disturbing sequences begins when reform supporters organize against the local criminal leaders. The opposition does not respond with polite political debate. Threats appear, businesses are damaged, and innocent families are placed under pressure. The movie makes it clear that corruption survives because fear reaches into every home. The central turning point recreates the assassination of Albert Patterson, an event that shocked Alabama in 1954. His death pushes the state toward emergency action and martial law. Number 13, The Night My Number Came Up, 1955. Can hearing a prediction cause people to create the very disaster they fear? That question drives the forgotten British suspense film The Night My Number Came Up. Air Marshal Hardy attends a dinner party in Hong Kong. During the evening, a naval commander describes a vivid dream. In it, Hardy travels aboard a Dakota aircraft with a specific number of passengers. The plane becomes lost in bad weather and crashes near a rocky coast. Hardy laughs because his scheduled flight to Tokyo will use a different aircraft with fewer people. The next morning, however, mechanical trouble forces the passengers onto a Dakota. Unexpected travelers join the flight, and the total number begins matching the dream. At first, Hardy tries remaining rational. Every similarity can be explained as coincidence. But as the weather worsens, communication equipment fails, and fuel becomes limited, the dream starts controlling the mood inside the plane. The most effective sequence occurs when the aircraft climbs into freezing clouds. Ice forms, the controls respond poorly, and the pilot dives sharply in an attempt to solve the problem. Passengers are thrown around the cabin while Hardy remembers another piece of the prediction. What makes the movie clever is that the dream may be saving them rather than condemning them. Hardy uses its details to understand where they might be and how the predicted ending could be avoided. The film creates suspense without monsters or villains. Its enemy is uncertainty. Every passenger must decide whether the dream is meaningless, supernatural, or a warning that should be taken seriously. Few aviation thrillers have used such a simple idea with this much tension. Number 12. The Criminal Life of Archibaldo de la Cruz, 1955. Luis Buñuel turned the story of a would-be criminal into one of the strangest dark comedies of the decade. Archibaldo de la Cruz is a wealthy and respectable Mexican man who believes he possesses a hidden talent for causing death. His obsession began during childhood when his governess told him that a music box could destroy anyone he wished away. Moments after he tested it, she was struck during the chaos of the Mexican Revolution. As an adult, Archibaldo continues connecting his private thoughts with unexpected accidents. He confesses to a judge, claiming responsibility for several deaths. The judge is confused because Archibaldo did not actually cause most of them. Archibaldo repeatedly plans elaborate crimes against women who attract, frustrate, or reject him. Yet every plan fails. Someone else interferes, the intended victim disappears, or fate reaches the person first. The movie's most famous sequence involves Lavinia, a woman whose appearance reminds Archibaldo of a mannequin. After she escapes his carefully prepared plan, he places the mannequin inside a furnace. Its wax face changes and collapses while Archibaldo watches with strange satisfaction. The scene is disturbing, ridiculous, and darkly funny at the same time. Buñuel is not creating an ordinary thriller. He is mocking male pride, fantasy, desire, and the belief that private thoughts make someone powerful. Archibaldo imagines himself as a brilliant criminal, but reality treats him like an unsuccessful performer. Behind the comedy is an unsettling idea. Society judges actions, but Archibaldo wants recognition for intentions that nobody can prove. He is almost offended that the law refuses to punish him for crimes he only dreamed of committing. Number 11. Bigger Than Life, 1956. In Bigger Than Life, the danger does not enter the perfect suburban home from outside. It is already sitting at the dinner table. James Mason plays Ed Avery, a respected schoolteacher, husband, and father. His family believes they live a comfortable middle-class life, but Ed secretly works extra hours as a taxi dispatcher because they need money. He also suffers from unexplained pain and sudden blackouts. Doctors diagnose a serious illness and prescribe cortisone, then considered a remarkable new treatment. The medicine saves Ed's life. At first, he feels energetic, confident, and grateful. Soon, however, he begins taking more than prescribed. His confidence becomes arrogance. He insults parents, questions the intelligence of his students, spends money carelessly, and treats his wife Lou as though she is beneath him. Inside their bright home, Ed begins acting like an absolute ruler. One of the most famous scenes shows Ed forcing his young son Richie to continue studying late at night. When the exhausted boy cannot solve a problem, Ed becomes cold and cruel. The large shadows, staircase, and oversized furniture make the home feel like a prison. The climax uses the biblical story of Abraham and Isaac. Ed interprets it as permission to punish his son, announcing that ancient scripture supports his thinking. Lou desperately responds that God stopped Abraham. Ed answers with terrifying certainty that God was wrong. Director Nicholas Ray used the story to attack the false perfection of 1950s family life. The medicine exposes emotions that may already have existed inside Ed. The result is a domestic drama that slowly transforms into psychological horror. Number 10. The Black Sleep, 1956. Imagine placing Basil Rathbone, Bela Lugosi, Lon Chaney Jr., John Carradine, Tor Johnson, and Akeem Tamaroff inside one gothic horror film. Somehow, The Black Sleep gathered that cast and then almost vanished from popular memory. The story begins in 19th century England. Dr. Gordon Ramsay is waiting to be punished for a crime he did not commit. Brilliant surgeon Sir Joel Cadman secretly saves him by giving him a drug called the Black Sleep. It creates a condition so close to death that the authorities believe Ramsay has died. Cadman brings him to a hidden laboratory and offers him work. He claims to be performing experiments that could help cure his wife's brain condition. Ramsay soon realizes that Cadman has been obtaining unwilling human subjects and operating on them. The lower levels of the mansion contain the results. Former patients wander through underground rooms, physically alive but permanently changed. Famous horror stars appear behind masks, makeup, or silent performances, making the laboratory feel like a museum of nightmares. One memorable sequence reveals Lon Chaney Jr. as Mungo, once a respected doctor and now a powerful, childlike figure after Cadman's experiment. Bela Lugosi appears as a silent servant, one of his final film roles. As Ramsay uncovers the truth, the hidden patients escape, and the laboratory falls into chaos. Cadman's scientific dream becomes the force that destroys him. The film is pulpy and sometimes exaggerated, but its atmosphere is irresistible. It also carries a surprisingly modern fear, a doctor claiming that future benefits justify whatever he does to powerless people in the present. Number 9. Decision at Sundown, 1957. Most revenge westerns tell us exactly who deserves punishment. Decision at Sundown slowly reveals that its hero may have built his entire mission on a lie. Randolph Scott plays Bart Allison, a bitter gunman who rides into the town of Sundown with his loyal friend Sam. Bart has spent 3 years searching for wealthy town leader Tate Kimbrough, whom he blames for the death of his wife Mary. Bart arrives on Kimbrough's wedding day. He enters the church, interrupts the ceremony, and announces that he intends to settle the past before sunset. The moment appears to establish Bart as the fearless hero challenging a corrupt ruler, but the situation becomes complicated. Kimbrough certainly controls the town through money, fear, and political influence. Yet people who knew Mary begin questioning Bart's version of the past. Sam finally admits that Mary may not have been the loyal, innocent wife Bart remembers. One of the film's strongest sequences traps Bart and Sam inside a stable while Kimbrough's men surround the building. Gunfire breaks the silence, Sam is wounded, and Bart refuses to surrender. Meanwhile, the townspeople begin turning against Kimbrough for their own reasons. The expected final showdown never becomes a simple victory. Bart learns that revenge cannot restore his wife, because the woman he has been mourning may have existed only in his imagination. Director Bud Bodeker strips the Western hero of certainty. Bart rides into town believing he owns the truth. He leaves after discovering that pain can change memory. The film asks whether revenge remains heroic when the Avenger refuses to question himself. Number 8. The Tarnished Angels, 1957. Douglas Sirk is usually remembered for colorful family melodramas, but The Tarnished Angels is a bitter black-and-white story about former heroes performing dangerous tricks to survive. During the Great Depression, reporter Burke Devlin attends a New Orleans air show. He becomes fascinated by Roger Schumann, a celebrated First World War pilot who now races aging aircraft around pylons for small crowds. Roger travels with his wife Laverne, their young son Jack, and mechanic Jiggs. Laverne performs parachute jumps while Roger risks his life in the air. Their glamorous appearance hides poverty, resentment, and emotional exhaustion. Burke brings the family into his home and begins falling in love with Laverne. She feels ignored by Roger, who appears more devoted to flying than to his family. Jiggs also loves her, turning the group into a painful collection of people wanting what they cannot have. The air racing sequences are the film's visual center. Fragile planes circle dangerously close to pylons while spectators watch from below. Roger flies as though the war never ended, and each race is another battle proving that he still matters. The darkest moment comes when Roger needs a replacement aircraft. A wealthy businessman suggests that Laverne could become part of the agreement. Roger does not openly accept, but his willingness to continue the conversation reveals how badly his obsession has damaged him. Cirque adapted the movie from William Faulkner's novel Pylon. Beneath the flying scenes is a story about people trapped by old identities. Roger was once a hero, now he must risk his life before cheering strangers simply to feel alive again. Number 7. Plunder Road, 1957. Plunder Road begins with almost no explanation. Rain falls across a dark railway line, while 5 men quietly prepare one of the most carefully organized robberies in 1950s cinema. Their target is a train carrying $10 million in gold. Using trucks, equipment, precise timing, and detailed planning, the crew separates the railway cars and removes the heavy shipment. The opening operation unfolds like a mechanical puzzle, with every man completing a specific task. After the robbery, the gold is divided among 3 trucks traveling different routes toward Los Angeles. The men believe separation will reduce suspicion. Instead, the plan creates 3 smaller stories in which weather, police patrols, mechanical problems, and human nervousness threaten the operation. The movie's most famous sequence is the robbery itself. Director Hubert Cornfield uses darkness, heavy rain, metal sounds, and limited dialogue. There is no glamorous music telling the audience to admire the criminals. The work looks cold, exhausting, and dangerous. As daylight arrives, the perfect plan begins breaking apart. One truck attracts attention after a traffic incident. Another faces problems with its load. Radio reports spread descriptions of the stolen gold, while the surviving men realize that every road may be watched. The leader has arranged a clever method for disguising the gold and moving it through the city. However, the film's final irony shows that large crimes create problems too large to control. The treasure itself becomes nearly impossible to hide. At only a little over an hour, Plunder Road wastes almost nothing. It helped establish the stripped-down robbery structure later seen in many crime thrillers, yet it remains far less famous than the movies that followed its road. Number 6. The Lineup, 1958. Long before Dirty Harry, director Don Siegel turned the streets of San Francisco into a hunting ground in The Lineup. The movie begins when a porter steals a tourist's suitcase from a cruise ship terminal. A speeding taxi hits a police officer, crashes, and exposes part of an international smuggling operation. Criminals have hidden illegal packages inside the luggage of innocent travelers returning from Asia. The police investigation is only half of the story. The movie soon follows Dancer, a calm but dangerous collector played by Eli Wallach. He travels with an older mentor named Julian, who records the final words of people in a notebook, and a nervous driver named McLean. Dancer must locate several tourists and recover the hidden packages before delivering them to a mysterious leader known only as the Man. The tourists have no idea why strangers are suddenly searching their possessions. One memorable scene takes place inside an apartment, where Dancer discovers that a woman's child has unknowingly found and damaged the hidden package. Dancer's polite expression disappears, revealing how quickly his controlled personality can change. The final section moves to Sutro Baths and then onto San Francisco's unfinished freeway system. Cars race through the city while the police close in. Siegel uses actual locations, giving viewers a valuable look at late 1950s San Francisco. The movie came from a police radio and television series, yet it feels tougher than a normal procedural. Dancer is not a romantic gangster. He is an impatient employee completing a task. That cold professionalism makes him far more frightening than a villain who enjoys explaining himself. Number 5. A Time to Love and a Time to Die, 1958. Most American war films of the period followed Allied soldiers. Douglas Sirk made the risky choice of telling A Time to Love and a Time to Die through a German soldier who is beginning to understand the horror surrounding him. Ernst Graber serves on the Eastern Front during the final years of the Second World War. His unit retreats through ruined villages while officers order the execution of civilians suspected of helping resistance fighters. Ernst follows orders but becomes increasingly disgusted. He receives leave and returns to his German hometown, hoping to find his parents. Instead, he discovers destroyed streets and the remains of his family home. Nobody knows whether his parents escaped, were injured, or disappeared during the bombing. Ernst meets Elizabeth, the daughter of a doctor who has been arrested after criticizing the government. Surrounded by destruction, they fall in love and attempt to create a few days of normal life. One of the film's most beautiful scenes shows the couple enjoying food, music, and conversation while explosions continue in the distance. Their happiness feels almost unreal because the audience knows Ernst must soon return to the front. The picture also contrasts 2 Germans from Ernst's past. One has become a wealthy party official living comfortably while others suffer. The other, played by novelist Erich Maria Remarque, quietly opposes the regime, and warns Ernst that personal goodness does not erase responsibility. When Ernst returns to his unit, he faces a moral choice involving captured civilians. The ending brings love, conscience, and war together with heartbreaking simplicity. Cirque presents beauty inside destruction without allowing romance to hide the consequences of obedience. Number 4. The Breaking Point, 1950. Everyone remembers Humphrey Bogart and Lauren Bacall in To Have and Have Not, but Michael Curtiz created a darker and more faithful version of Ernest Hemingway's story with The Breaking Point. John Garfield plays Harry Morgan, a former wartime sailor operating a small fishing boat in California. Business is poor, payments are overdue, and Harry fears losing both his boat and his ability to support his wife Lucy and their children. When a wealthy customer abandons him during a trip to Mexico, Harry is left without enough money to return home. He agrees to transport people illegally across the border. That decision introduces him to lawyer Duncan, who later offers a much more dangerous job involving criminals escaping after a robbery. Harry insists that he is doing everything for his family, yet each compromise moves him deeper into a world he believes he can control. One memorable scene takes place between Harry and Leona Charles, played by Patricia Neal. Leona flirts with him inside the boat cabin, testing his loyalty and pride. Their conversation carries more tension than many action scenes because Harry clearly wants the freedom she represents. The final confrontation aboard the boat is fast and desperate. Harry and his loyal partner Wesley become trapped between armed criminals and the open sea. The violence is brief, but its consequences are devastating. The film ends not with Harry, but with Wesley's young son standing alone near the dock, waiting for a father who will not return. People move around him without stopping. That final image quietly reveals who pays the price when desperate men gamble with other people's lives. Number 3. The Prowler, 1951. A frightened woman calls the police after seeing someone outside her window. Unfortunately, the officer who answers may be more dangerous than the Prowler. Susan Gilvray lives inside an expensive Los Angeles home, while her husband works nights as a radio announcer. Officer Webb Garwood arrives to investigate her report. He quickly notices Susan's loneliness, her beauty, and the comfortable life surrounding her. Webb returns without official reason. He complains about his low salary and explains that he once expected a better future. Susan admits that her marriage is unhappy. Their conversations become an affair, but Webb wants more than love. He wants Susan's home, money, and social position. After learning about her husband's life insurance, Webb creates a plan. He pretends another Prowler is outside, returns as a responding police officer, and arranges a confrontation in the darkness. He then presents himself as a brave officer who acted in self-defense. The coroner accepts his story, and Webb marries Susan. For a moment, he appears to have achieved his dream. However, Susan's pregnancy threatens to reveal that their relationship began before her husband's death. The final section takes the couple to an abandoned desert town, where Susan goes into labor while Webb hides from the law. The empty buildings turn his dream of owning property into a cruel joke. He finally has an entire town around him, but there is nobody there, and nothing has value. Written secretly by blacklisted screenwriter Dalton Trumbo and directed by Joseph Losey, The Prowler turns the American dream into a trap built from envy, dishonesty, and ambition. Number 2. The Steel Helmet, 1951. While the Korean War was still happening, Samuel Fuller made The Steel Helmet, a raw war film that looked nothing like Hollywood's polished battlefield adventures. The movie opens with a helmet lying in the dirt. It begins moving, revealing Sergeant Zack underneath. A bullet has passed through the helmet without taking his life. Zack cuts himself free and meets a young Korean boy whom he calls Short Round. They join a small group of American soldiers searching for safety. The patrol includes an inexperienced officer, an African-American medic, a Japanese-American soldier, and men from different backgrounds who would normally have little in common. The group occupies an abandoned Buddhist temple, unaware that enemy soldiers are secretly using it as an observation point. The temple becomes a confined battlefield where every doorway, statue, and shadow may conceal danger. One of the movie's most famous scenes involves a captured enemy major attempting to divide the Americans. He reminds the Japanese-American soldier of the wartime internment of his family. He then asks the African-American medic why he should defend a country that denies him equal treatment. Instead of avoiding these uncomfortable questions, Fuller places them directly inside a low-budget war film. The soldiers understand that the criticisms contain truth, but they refuse to accept the enemy officer's manipulation. When the temple is attacked, confusion replaces heroic organization. Smoke fills the rooms, orders are misunderstood, and survival depends on frightened individuals acting quickly. Made for a tiny budget, The Steel Helmet feels immediate because Fuller had served in combat. It presents soldiers as exhausted people carrying personal anger, prejudice, fear, and courage into the same battle. Number 1. Night and the City, 1950. At number 1 is a film about a man who spends every moment running towards success, only to discover that the entire city is waiting for him to fall. Richard Widmark plays Harry Fabian, an American hustler surviving in London's nightlife. Harry always has another scheme, another promise, and another request for money. His girlfriend Mary loves him but has grown tired of watching every dream collapse. Harry sees his opportunity during a wrestling match. He meets Gregorius, a respected veteran of traditional Greek wrestling who dislikes the dishonest matches controlled by his son Christo. Harry believes he can use Gregorius to create his own wrestling promotion and challenge Christo's control of the business. To finance the plan, Harry manipulates nightclub owner Phil Nosseros and Phil's ambitious wife Helen. Each person thinks they are using someone else. The scheme becomes a web in which nobody understands how quickly loyalties can change. The film's greatest sequence is the wrestling match between Gregorius and the Strangler. What begins as a demonstration becomes a brutal struggle between generations and styles. Harry watches his business dream collapse as the men fight beyond exhaustion. After the match ends in tragedy, Christo places a reward on Harry. Suddenly, every nightclub owner, street criminal, and former friend sees money in capturing him. Harry runs through dark London streets, construction sites, clubs, and riverside alleys. Director Jules Dassin turns the city into a giant maze with no safe exit. Harry Fabian is dishonest, selfish, and exhausting, yet his final desperation is strangely moving. He does not simply want money, he wants the world to admit that he once became somebody important. How many of these forgotten films had you actually seen? The 1950s were not filled only with cheerful musicals and famous Hollywood stars. These movies explored corruption, obsession, war, greed, broken families, and fears that still feel modern today. Tell us which forgotten title deserves another chance, and share this video with someone who believes every great classic has already been discovered. Subscribe, because many more forgotten films are still waiting in the dark.